In this video 3-4, we will be solving multi-step inequalities. By the end of the video in work time in class, you should be able to say, I can solve multi-step inequalities. So here's our first example of a multi-step inequality where you want to isolate the variable using the properties of inequalities. So to get the t all alone, you first would subtract 6 just like you would if you had an equation. So then you're left with 3t is greater than 9. And then divide both sides by 3. And since you're dividing both sides by a positive 3, you're not going to reverse the sign. So t is greater than 9 divided by 3, which is 3. You want to fence in a rose bed that is adjacent to a deck. The length of your deck is 14 feet. So the side that's adjacent to the deck doesn't need fencing. So 3 sides of the rose bed would need to be fenced in. You have at most 44 feet of fence. What are the possible widths of the rose bed? So we know we have the one length, which is 14. The other length, because it's a rectangle, the other length of 14 is right next to the deck, so we don't need to put the fence around that. So we have one length of 14, and then we would have 2 widths, and we want to know the widths. So in taking the words and writing an inequality, we would say 14, because we need the fence going across the 14 feet, plus the 2 widths, so 2 times w for widths. At most we have 14 feet, so that means we want less than or 44 feet, sorry. So we want less than or equal to 44. And so that would be taking words and writing our inequality. So to isolate the w, you would subtract 14 from both sides using our properties of inequalities. We would be left with 2w is less than or equal to, sorry about that, 30. Divide both sides by 2 to get what one width would be. The width can be anything less than or equal to 15. So 15 feet or less. In this inequality, we have to first get rid of the parentheses by using the distribution property. So we have 2t minus 2 plus 3t is less than 2. Combine like terms, 2t plus 3t. 5t minus 2 is less than 2. Isolate the t. We're going to add 2 to both sides. So 5t is less than 4. And then divide both sides by 5. So t is less than 4/5. Four n plus 2 is less than 7n minus 13. In this problem, we would need to put the n terms to one side of the inequality and our constants to the other side. I'm going to subtract 4n from both sides to get the n's over on the right side of the inequality, and then I'm going to add 13 to both sides to get the constants to the left side of the inequality. So this would be 0, this would be 0, so we're left with 15 is less than 3n. Divide both sides by 3, so 5 is less than n. Or you can say n is greater than 5 when you put the variable first. 14 minus 6n is less than 2 times, in parentheses, 7 minus 3n. So here we want to distribute. So we have 14 minus 6n is less than or equal to 14 minus 6n. What ends up happening is we have the same on both sides. When it's the same, because if you were to, let's say, combine your terms, your n terms together, you'd be left with 14 is less than or equal to 14. What happens, it would always work. So we have all real numbers for our solution here. No matter what we would put in for n, it would always be the same. 4p plus 3 is greater than 9p plus 6 minus 5p. So we see we have an inequality, but on the right side of the inequality sign, we have to combine the like terms. np minus 5p gives you 4p plus 6, and on the other side we have 4p plus 3. Well, if I combine my terms here, if I subtract 4p from both sides, what ends up happening is when we simplify those sides, we're left with 3 is greater than 6. And we know that that's not the case. And so we know that no matter what we put in for p, if that simplifies to nothing, and 3 we know is not greater than 6, so then we write no solution, because that's not true. One other quick thing, I don't know if I noted this up here, because it's less than or equal to and it's the same on both sides, we know that it's always going to be equal to. Can you say I can solve multi-step inequalities? Write a summary and reflection and be prepared with any questions for the work time in class.